Greetings everyone, it is finally time for the 4 fandoms rant, part 2, the video game fandom. Yeah. In this series I'm gonna, of course, be talking about the video game fandom. What is the video game fandom? The little nitbits about it, what I like and dislike about it. And of course, there's the group of people that I really don't appreciate in this fandom, like I did in the anime fandom. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. A quick little history of gaming. Gaming itself was invented by a dude named Ralph Baer. Technically, I think we'd be possibly 10 years ahead in gaming, maybe, if he would have invented the brown box 10 years or so in advance than when he originally created it. But I forgot what held him back. I think it had something to do with his studies or his scientific research or whatever he was doing around that time. But it's because of him we have gaming today. And we have all kinds of systems. The Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and even Sega, a third-party company, used to have its own series as well. Eventually the arcades came around, and then the Atari. And of course the computer games from the 80s. Early and I think mid-80s. Anyway, first, out of all of these big systems came Nintendo. Oh yeah, which is the Famicom or Family Computer in Japan. Nintendo was made in Japan. Then came the Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Project Dolphin, which became the GameCube, and Revolution, which became the Wii. And of course, in the Sega series, you have the Sega Genesis, Sega Saturn, and Sega Dreamcast. In the PlayStation series, you have the PlayStation, PS2, and PS3. In the Xbox series, you have the Xbox and the Xbox 360. These are the console games. And I will say that PC gaming is not console gaming. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's a totally different aspect, but it is a gaming platform. And by PC, I mean computer games, of course. Handheld gaming. A lot of people think Game Boy or Nintendo DS when they think of handhelds. But really, the first major handheld game that I recall that was invented was the Game & Watch. A two-screen, game. Had 2 screens, sounds like the DS, and each one had their own special game on it, with a character that today is known as Mr. Game & Watch. Then, of course, in the Game Boy series, mainly, Nintendo, you had the Game Boy, Color Game Boy, Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance SP, Nintendo DS, the DS Lite, the DSi, the DS XL or Extra Large or whatever, and the upcoming 3DS or the 3D DS. And of course, for Sega, you had the Game Gear. Unfortunately, though it had some good quality, it took way too much battery power to maintain. And of course, you have the PlayStations, PSP, Slimline PSP, and I don't really keep up with them, so I don't know what else they made. Handheld gaming is definitely pretty epic. It's gaming on the go. And there's a lot of brilliant games for the handhelds. Even if they don't make it to consoles, handheld gaming has just as much epicness as any console game. At one time, Nintendo made the Virtual Boy. Though this was a fun system, to me anyway, it didn't do so well. Though its graphics were 3D based, it wasn't as good as the Nintendo 64, of course, and it only had red and black colors, but it did have all kinds of cool games with it. like a Wario game, a boxing game, I think called Teleroll Boxer or something like that. Nonetheless, it had some pretty epic graphics. I mean, they were 3D-like, not like polygon-wise, but they looked 3D. I personally have a Virtual Boy, and it's very fun. I don't care what you people say, I enjoyed playing it. And instead of sitting down and looking into the screen or eye vision place of it, I would lay down on the bed, put it on my head, and play it. So, nonetheless, pretty good system. Games fall into a category of genres. By genre, I mean a type of game it is. For example, an FPS is a first-person shooter. Examples of this are Halo and Call of Duty. An RPG is a role-playing game, like Final Fantasy, the Tales series, and Kingdom Hearts. Fighting, you have examples like Smash Brothers series and the Soul Calibur series. When it comes to racing, you have many to choose from, like Mario Kart, F-Zero, and many, many more. There are other kinds out there, like action, adventure, and sports, and all kinds of what I call subgenres that go along with the regular genres, like rail shooters, platformers, etc. There are even others out there I didn't mention, like survival horror games, like the Resident Evil series. Each person has their own genre they like, or just specific games within that genre. I like pretty much every genre. Well, I don't like anything perverted, and I'm not that much of a sports guy, but yeah, genres, you rock. When it comes to the video game industry, many people want to be a part of it. You can go to college and become a programmer, a designer, or just whatever. Most video games nowadays use voice actors and actresses. If you start a video game company, I suggest you choose wisely. The best voice actor for your character or actress can really help boost the game's sales and interest. Music composers are definitely a huge part of the whole fiasco, especially game testers. Now, everyone wants to be a game tester, but there's usually a downside to it. You want to test games, you also have to test the ones you don't like. And that is another reason why gamers might want to consider going to college if they want to be any of these. Now, when it comes to gaming companies, there are a whole lot of them out there. For example, Square. Square started the whole Final Fantasy thing. Then they became Squaresoft. There's another company out there called Enix. And one day, well, or Anix as some people want to call it, and one day they merged together to form Square Enix, or Square Enix as some people know them as. Sega, as you know, used to have their own console, but now they are a third-party company usually making Sonic games. Anywho, there are all kinds of companies out there, like Namco, and others out there. And usually these companies have other companies associated with them. For example, take the video game Batten Kaitos. It has a company called Tricrescendo working with them. Yeah, well, at least that's how I see it. I could be wrong. Oh well. Nonetheless, some video games rarely do games without other people. For example, Star Fox 64. It didn't need the help of really any other company. It was just flat out Nintendo itself. But then again, I could be wrong. But nonetheless, I don't remember seeing on the label about any other company helping it out. But that was Star Fox 64, one of the greatest 64 games of all time. And that is a gaming company. Well, parties. Third parties, whatnot. Most gaming companies are third parties. You'll rarely find one that's a first party company. And if you ever form yours one day, use wisdom and intelligence. Alright, people. Next up is part 2 of the video game fandom rant. I'm going to be discussing the fandom itself and the difference between a true gamer and a so-called expert. Oh yeah, there's a difference. Anyway, Hmm. It'll be interesting because I'm going to be talking about more than just true and so-called gaming experts, but all kinds of gaming types out there. The good and the bad about the video game fandom, some hints and tips for you and younger children and even adults. So, stay tuned for part 2. God bless, Jesus loves, and fare thee well.